Welcome everybody to IMAGI-NATION TV, and today we're taking on a new format where we've got an official partner school, and this will be the format of the show moving forward. So we have Kernai College as our official partner school, and we have a live audience. So we've got Jade Hiskins. Jade, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. If you're going to come up with any really good questions for the guests along the way, feel free to message me on the chat line and I'll throw it into them. So thanks for joining us. And we've also got Jacob and Crystal Collier. Jacob and Crystal, how are you?
We're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Hey, tell me what imagination means in 6 words or less.
What you see on your head and make up.
Yeah, I love that. Jacob?
It's what you think of, and yeah, what you think of.
What you think of is pretty good. There's a this guy called Ernest Hemingway who was like a reasonably fancy writer, and he said if you could write a 6-word story, you were like the most awesome storyteller ever. So you guys just nailed it. It's what you think of is close to the best definition of imagination I've heard. Hey Sam, how you going? You're good. Thanks for joining us on the show. Looking forward to hanging out today. And we have one of your students who's going to be co-hosting with me today. So first time ever we have a 14-year-old co-host on IMAGI-NATION TV. And we have Yindi Wild Rose. Yindi, how you feeling about hosting today?
Pretty nervous, but I think I'll be okay.
Hey, what does asking questions mean to you as an idea? Do you know anyone that's really good at asking questions?
Oh, my younger brother, he's ridiculous. He could come up with like 1,000 questions for one tiny thing, and it gets really annoying.
Well, good. Well, today you're going to have to take on some of your younger brother's skill set and ask some questions of our host. So you ready to go?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. Let's get into it. Let's get your principal on the show for the 60-second principal challenge. We've got Anthony Radalgan here. Anthony, how are you?
Happy to be here and pretty excited.
Okay, well, let's get ready for the 60-second challenge. Quick warm up. Have you got anything you want to clear before we go into this?
From me, yeah.
Yeah, just any opening thoughts before we go into the 60-second challenge? You know, final messages before you enter this world of this challenge and come out the other side as a different person?
Well, my big question that's really troubling me at the moment is when's the AIM hoodie coming out for this year?
Oh, good question. Okay, well, we'll answer that at the end of the show so some people pay attention along the way. We've got the chat lines and people jumping in, so keep throwing in your messages. Parul saying, wow, a live audience and a wizard later today. Sweet hoodies. Atlanta saying, love those hoodies, guys. Kalisha saying, go Yindi. Jason Burnell say, you've got to love Papa Hemingway. So here we go. 60-second challenge starting in 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, Anthony, what is your idea of perfect happiness?
Perfect happiness. Perfect happiness, seeing people do really well.
What's your greatest fear?
Not being the best that I can be.
What's the trait you most deplore in yourself?
Slow to think sometimes. Slow to answer questions.
I love that. What's the trait you most deplore or dislike in other people?
Selfishness.
Which living person do you most admire?
My wife.
What's your greatest extravagance?
Chocolate.
What's your current state of mind?
A bit baffled right now.
What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
Purity.
And on what occasion do you lie?
When I'm going to get in trouble.
Bing, 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 bing. Anthony, thank you for joining us. Thank you for having Kernai College come on as a first school partner on IMAGI-NATION TV, and looking forward to having your students be a part of the live audience and Indy co-hosting with us. Good on you.
Yeah, proud of those kids and wrapped to be the first school. Really, really pumped.
Good on you, mate. All right, we'll get those hoodies to you soon.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Yindi, how did the boss go? How did Anthony go? Principal.
I reckon he did pretty good, except I was pretty keen to find out what he lies about. That sounded pretty funny.
Yeah, I thought he did quite well, didn't he? All right, we're about to go on our 180 seconds of Wizardry. We have Jack Fuller here, and we're about to get this show started. Jack, how are you feeling about being a wizard for 180 seconds on IMAGI-NATION TV?
Pretty good. I'm up for giving it a shot. I've got my wizard hoodie.
That is definitely a wizard hoodie. All right, mate. Well, we're about to get the timer started. We've got 5 seconds until your official Wizardry starts. 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Great. So, I'm Jack. I'm an Australian living in Los Angeles, and I just wrote a book about imagination in business. And so even though I wrote it and it's for business people, I don't know if you guys are thinking about going into business or not yet, but there's a lot in there that can help anyone. So I thought I'd give you some of the key points from that book and you can apply them in your life. So the first one is making time for reflection. It's really important because, especially with all the virus crisis and there might be some anxiety in the background in your life, it's really important to not get too addicted to social media and maybe like take a walk without your phone is one idea, or just stare out the window. But your body has to have some periods of low input when you don't try and shove a lot in there, because that's really important for cultivating your imagination. Second one is imagination feeds on action. So like now in your life, but also throughout your life, try things out. It's really important. So not just imagining them, but actually getting there and doing them. You'll discover things. It'll feed imagination. Action and imagination feed off each other. Third one is playing. And, our societies often pretends that work is so important, but actually play is just as important. It's essential. And a lot of business people that I spoke to, CEOs in America, they're saying we need to make time to play because they're working too hard. They're not getting a big picture. So, just improvising, like laughing with your friends, messing around, that kind of time is really important, and you shouldn't squeeze it out of your life, as things go on. Fourth one is that imagination always starts from two things. One is something that inspires you. The other one is something that frustrates you. So if you're inspired by something, you want to then imagine, okay, how can I get more of this? Maybe you like something, you want to maybe do it for your life. If you're frustrated by something, you want to figure out how to solve that problem. And, a lot of great inventions, for example, happened through that. So one exercise you can do is, everyone who's watching this now, write down one thing that inspires you and one thing that frustrates you. And then maybe you can share it in the chat afterwards and we can talk about that. I feel I'm doing pretty well on time here. But the last one is that the starting point for imagination is always hope. So there's a myth, an ancient Greek myth about Pandora, who's this woman who had a box, Pandora's box, and she opened it up and all of these creatures flew out of it. So, causing trouble in the world, like fairies and goblins, everything flying out into the world. But when she looked at the bottom of that box, there was a little winged creature that stood for hope. So, no matter what difficulties we face in life, collectively or ourselves, we always have hope. And you've got to hold on to that because it's always the starting point for imagination.
Bing, bing, bing. 3 minutes on the nose. You nailed it, Jack. Awesome. Hey, Yindi, what inspires you and what frustrates you?
I think my mum and my dad and just my family in general, they definitely inspire me. The thing that frustrates me sometimes is when I walk around and everyone's just staring at their phones. It's like just take in this beautiful day and have fun doing whatever.
Crystal, Jacob, what inspires you? What frustrates you?
Something inspires me is when I get to play soccer with all my friends.
What about a frustration?
Probably when everyone doesn't listen to teachers and don't stop talking when it's a test.
Yeah, that's a good one. What do you reckon, Jacob?
Something that inspires me is people just working together and that. And something that frustrates me is people just not getting along, fighting and everything like that.
Awesome, Jacob. Jade, what do you think? What inspires you and what frustrates you?
My mum inspires me, and something that frustrates me is bullying.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jade. And
Well,
Sam, what about you? What inspires you and what frustrates you?
Inspires me is my mum, and frustrates me when people assume things straight away.
Yeah, that's such a good idea, that idea of assumption, that you can kind of think you know something without listening. And Jack, thank you so much for taking us into that. Well, we've got Hannah James on the chat line saying, Dr. Jack Fuller, what an exemplary wizard. Luna Tune saying, I need to stare out of the window more, very underrated. Benita saying, imagination feeds off action, try things out, love this. Jason Bernal saying, it's so good to hear someone rating players as really important. So thank you for taking the time with us to pass on your wizardry skills to Imagination TV and everyone watching.
Yeah, of course. No worries. Thanks a lot.
Oh, good. All right, Yindi, we're about to jump into the panel where we explore the theme of asking questions. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, showtime. I think we've got a short video that's going to introduce them, and then we'll get going with our panel.
If you don't want to work, don't bother dreaming.
Shame is just nothing.
All of us are dealt different cards, and those cards can be awful, but it's what you do. You are responsible for your reaction.
Today's segment is about the thinkers coming together and exploring big ideas with us and for us. And today's topic, and the topic for the week that we're looking at, is asking questions. So our guests that we have joining us, we have Chris Neal, Daisy Turnball-Brown, we have Gideon Mzembe, and Yarraka Bayles. So thank you everyone for joining us and being a part of this period of asking questions. Gideon, I'd love to know from you, what does it mean to ask questions, and why do we do it as creatures?
Right, let me sort this out. Asking questions. So asking questions, why do we do it? I'll start backwards in this one. We want to conclude what it is that we're trying to perceive, what we're trying to see in this world. So for instance, if someone has a goal or they want to be something when they grow up, it's important to ask questions so you know the person you have to be. So for instance, if I want to become a professional football player, what does it take to become a football player? Obviously, the obvious ones is health. So it's important to be healthy. So that's the question being answered. So now you live a life of answering that question. So it's very important to ask questions so you can gain more information about the type of person you want to be in this world.
Hey, Chris, can I bring you in there? I'd love to ask what I think is a reasonably simple question. Can we ever actually find the answers to questions?
Not necessarily, and it's not necessarily the point of questioning. Questioning is an exploration. It's a road of discovery, I should say. And I think curiosity is a vital life force. Question everything. Is this right? Does this feel good? What if? I think we question everything and explore everything we can in the world to grow and become strong, developed, talented, creative, contented people.
Yarraka, how do we go into worlds where people are asking us questions that are uncomfortable? And how do we operate in a grey space of of questions that can sometimes be personal or make us feelings really come up. How do we deal with that process of questioning and exploration with other people?
Actually, for me, my life's an open book, so nothing is off limits. When you've got nothing to hide, I feel comfortable answering questions, because if you don't ask that question, then you'll never know. And there's no such thing as a difficult question when, you know, you're living your true, authentic life and, you know, living your best life. You've got nothing to hide. So I've learnt to be comfortable with those uncomfortable questions and sit in that discomfort. So, you know, I encourage people to ask as many questions as possible. I think we've grown up in a culture where we're constantly told, don't ask a question, you know, it's rude. Don't ask a person's age, or don't ask a person why they're in prison for. I'm like, that's the first questions I ask, are the ones that people tell me, you know, you shouldn't ask those kinds of questions, it's rude. But I've always been very curious, and I tend to overanalyze. So I'm just a natural person that loves to ask questions.
Awesome. Well, we'll get you to ask a few along the way of the panel as we get this convo going. Hey, Yindi, when I was at school, I felt one of the challenges is and being when you're in that, I suppose, young person's seat, you kind of, I always felt like I was pretending a little bit at times, and then I had another self that was maybe myself at home. I was trying to work out who I was meant to be. So I think when you have that idea of how do you be true to yourself, how do you take that idea on when you're 14 heading on 15 to try and think about uncomfortable situations and asking uncomfortable questions and exploring what it is to have a life?
With uncomfortable questions, I don't really know what to do. I kind of just steer clear of them because I don't want to offend people. But I definitely have like this side of myself where I just kind of hide it away and just kind of not fake, but I just don't tell everyone everything about me. And then you'll see me with my other friends and I'm just like this crazy person that doesn't care and is just all me. So yeah.
Yeah, I wonder with with the idea of being truthful to ourselves and knowing what that truth is, maybe part of it is it's okay to have lots of shapes, that we can have different ways that we engage in the world. Daisy, how do you go about asking questions of yourself and of others?
Allowing them to be uncomfortable is really important. And I think for me, as a mother and also as a teacher, seeing the way when children are younger, they ask questions at a never-ending rate. There's no fear of the answer. And I think as we get older, it's being worried about what the answer will be and learning to accept that the answer may not be what we want it to be.
Crystal and Jacob, what's it like in class when you don't know the answer to something and you have a question inside of you? Are you scared of putting your hand up, or do you feel cool about it? Like, what's that feeling like when you're like when you have a question inside of you? How do you go about asking it?
Well, I get really nervous and like just freeze and don't do anything. I just wait until she asks me or he asks a new person.
Thanks for sharing that, Crystal. And what about you, Jacob?
Like, depends what teacher I have. Some classes I'm not scared to ask questions in, but some other I'm totally scared of and don't say anything.
There's a when we work, like we've got about 100 staff at AIM that work around the world, and there's some people that love asking questions. So we do video calls a lot, and you'll have the person that sort of puts their hand up really quickly and will say, oh, okay, yeah, I want to ask a question. And then there's often, like you were saying, Crystal, there's lots of people who just sort of sit back and let other people ask the questions, and they do the listening and they kind of get the clues along the way. Sometimes we ask questions a little bit too quickly and we miss that listening along the way. So I don't know if there's a right or a wrong way. One thing that I do know is that putting your hand up in class, if you do have that question, is not the most dangerous thing you'll ever do in your life. So if you can get courage in doing that, the next time it becomes easier and the next time it becomes easier. Gideon, what's the most uncomfortable you've been in a situation where you didn't know something and you learning by asking questions was the key bridge for you to move to the next stage of life, and you didn't know how to move, you were frozen, and then how did you unfreeze yourself to get the courage to ask that question or to acquire that knowledge to move to the next level in this game of life?
The first thing that comes to mind at the moment is something that happened recently. I'm a personal trainer. That's what I do for work, and a personal trainer. You know, I assist with people with the health and lifestyle. So for the first time in my 15 years of being a personal trainer, I had a client with a Muslim background. And so there's certain cultural aspects that you must abide to and, you know, respect. So for me, I didn't know whether to ask those questions every time something was awkward. Like, one of them is obviously the no touching, and I'm a big hands-on kind of guy when it comes to slaps on the back and high fives and all that stuff. So, you know, and even now I still feel that hesitation to ask questions. So yeah, I guess that's part of growing, is asking questions. That way you sort of know what moves to make, how to express yourself, and how to conversate, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's absolutely, like, that idea of learning about people who are inverted commas different. Like, you know, that we've got labels where we say, oh, someone's different because culturally they're from a different background, they're different, they come from a different country. When we look at like cross-cultural training and how we do that, how do we train people about another person's culture so they then have an understanding of it? Yarraka, how have you looked into that world of trying to help people understand some other perspectives? And yeah, how have you taught people so they can not freeze as well? Because sometimes you can then freak out too much. You're like, I don't ever know what to say because I've been trained that these things have happened. And yeah, how do you work through that moment that Gideon's sort of talking about of, do I ask all the time or do I not ask? And yeah, what's been your experience with that?
I think obviously there's a time and place for everything. Discernment is huge. I think if the person asking the question is coming from a genuine place of curiosity, then your question will be received in the manner in which it is being asked. But I think some of the uncomfortable things, you know, just to make people comfortable and let them know, look, you know, if there's anything you need to know, feel free to ask. Like, I don't want to live life with regrets and think, oh man, I should have asked him that, or I should have asked that, because then it's going to be playing on my mind. I like to go to sleep at night with a clear conscience. So I think it's important to be open and transparent and make people feel comfortable. You know, just if you feel there's a bit of awkwardness, prompt them. Say, you know, is there anything you want to ask, or, you know, especially before parting, because I think we hold on to so much and then we regret it afterwards. And that's sort of what eats up, and those emotional things then manifest into physical things. So I think it's really important to make people comfortable, and to also you have to be comfortable within yourself to be able to make others feel comfortable, because you can't give what you don't have.
Yindi, what's the question you want to ask?
Oh, I shouldn't have one. I feel like all the good questions have already been asked.
All right. It's fair. That's a good back in a game of tennis. Sam, what's a question you've got listening into the conversation? You got anything you want to ask the panel? No, that's okay. Jade, have you got anything that you want to ask listening in?
Not really.
All right, we'll go to the chat line and see if anyone's got anything they want to ask. Just a few comments that are here. We've got Brad Witters saying the intention of the question is very important. I agree with that, and I thought it was a great point from Yarraka. Angus saying, Chris, a low key love that painting. He loves the painting in your background, Chris. Chris, you'd be classified as, you know, on paper a really successful person who's achieved a lot, who's learned a lot. How do you deal with doubt and with the desire around curiosity? Because often I think when we're growing up and we're looking at people who have done things or have achieved things, and you're in that high school situation, it can almost feel like the person's a completely different person. What's been your journey from sort of 14, 15 to where you are now, and how have you tried to maintain that curiosity?
Well, I joined the Sydney Morning Herald as a cub reporter, as a trainee reporter when I was 17. And I was thrown into this very dynamic, actually quite aggressive environment. But it was one that was based on asking questions. That's what journalists do. And as to self-doubt, I think if you don't have self-doubt, you can't improve, you can't better yourself. And for all the people I've managed in teams, I have always this piece of advice for them. When you're running your race, don't look from side to side at what everyone else is doing. Pick your goal and run hell for leather for it. It's your personal best that counts. And doing that resolves doubt and constantly questing for improvement and asking those questions and being curious always is important. Even at my age, I'm bombarded with questions from my grandchildren, and I can't help but encourage them to ask me more, even if they're very uncomfortable. Like, why are you so old, Nan?
What did you say to that one?
Because I am, honey.
Just, this is my age. Hey, Yindi, what's a good question to ask someone to really get to know them? There's a question from Jack Fuller, who was on earlier as a wizard.
What are your interests?
I used to like sport a lot, but I don't think I like it anymore. I think I've just had this moment where I'm like, oh, I think sport might actually just have taken quite a few hours from my life and stopped me thinking, but maybe it taught me a bit about this. Oh, sorry, that wasn't actually for me. Okay, let's go to Daisy. Daisy, what's a good question to really get to know someone, and how do you build trust with a group of students when you're teaching and you're trying to build that bond?
I think a good question is, what do you do for fun? Because it generally kind of confuses people at first, and they don't always have an answer lined up. But I think the idea of asking questions in class is a really important one. And I think often, as you guys said, you sometimes freeze up. And I think the biggest thing to remember is that when you ask a question, there's certainly someone else in the class that wants to ask the same question. And having the bravery to ask the question helps everyone else in the class. Even if they know the answer, having the answer said again will be good for them. Yeah, so I think that ability to ask questions, and if you feel like there are some teachers you can't ask questions to, have a conversation with that teacher about how you can feel more comfortable asking questions.
Yeah, we did an activity once with the kids at AIM where we got everyone to write a thank you note to the teacher that they thought hated them the most, and just like, you know, go and write a note and say thanks so much for teaching, and then watch the way that teacher treats you in the next class. And for all the kids that came back, they were like, oh, the teacher came up to me and was like, oh, hey, going, like, and checked in on what was happening. So because there's no shame at AIM, we've got 5 minutes left of this chat. Jade, I want a question. What have you got? First question that springs to mind. You got to be brave.
Gee. I think my first question would be the first one that was already being said.
Let's go. Give it another go. What is it?
Do you think how hard is it? No. What do you find interesting in life? I don't know. I have a deeper meaning to that.
Yeah. Yarraka, what do you find interesting in life?
Journey, the unknown. Just life, living life in the present. I think that is the most interesting thing. You know, we don't know what tomorrow will bring. We don't know what to expect. So I think that's just amazing.
Gideon, what do you find interesting in life?
Jump on the same boat as Yarraka, the unknown. You know, I find that very, very interesting, and it keeps the journey interesting as well.
Crystal and Jacob, what question have you got? Jade, that was a fantastic question, and good on you for thinking and sitting on it for a little bit. Crystal, Jacob, what's a question that one or both of you would like to ask?
My question is, if you could change anything in the world, what would you change?
Chris?
Oh, some of our international political leaders, I think, would be a very good start.
So you just roll them and get another couple in, or?
Yes, if we could.
If we could. Yeah, I think there's a chance and an important moment for change. I was reading an article over the weekend about 4 or 5 of the countries that have done phenomenally well at handling COVID-19. They had one thing in common. They all had female leaders. Jacob, have you got a question that you would like to ask the group?
Yeah. What do you think about bullying?
Bullying.
Yeah.
Bullying. Yeah. Daisy, what do you reckon about bullying?
Well, I think bullying is incredibly sad, and schools have to have a zero tolerance policy on it. But I also think that it takes a lot of self-awareness to realize that bullying often comes from pain, and when it's being done to you, it's very hard to consider that. But I think that as we grow up as teenagers and into adults, we realize that, and I think if we can learn how to see that in other people, it would help a lot.
Yindi, what do you think about bullying?
I can't stand it. It just makes me feel so sad for the people that it's done to. And sometimes I try to stick up, but that doesn't really work all the time, and then it just gets thrown back at me. But I can't stand it. It's just disgusting.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than making someone feel small. It's one of the things that, when coming back to the earlier question that we had around what frustrates us, and from Jack Fuller, and what inspires us, what really inspires me is when people say yes and encourage you. And what really frustrates me is when people say no and try and put you down. Hey, Sam, what's a question that you've got for the group?
It's another bullying question. Would you bully someone if they have done something? Or would you help them out to fix their mistake?
Can you try that question one more time? Because I think I just got a bit of it. Go one more time for me.
If you were to bully, would it be because someone made a mistake, or would you help them to change it so they don't make that mistake again?
Yeah, how do we work with forgiveness, Yarraka? How do we work with people who might have hurt us or hurt someone else? And how do we go to that person and try and build healing? How do we do that?
I guess keeping it age appropriate. With our recent incident, being a group of very young school kids, like grade 4 kids, that don't intentionally mean to bully someone to the point where they want to take their own life. So I think we need to be educated a lot more on what exactly bullying means, the legal ramifications, and how do we ensure that teachers, students, families, educators, how do we as a whole understand what bullying is? Because you can ask 1,000 different people what bullying is, and they may have very different answers. So I think there's a very grey area because people aren't clear of exactly what bullying is. There's 3 different steps of bullying, and now there are legal consequences. So I think it's very different and difficult when you're dealing with children, because when you're calling a child a bully, that's sort of putting, it's labeling a child that may not mean to be a bully. I think if children are displaying, violent behaviours, there's obviously something going on. So I think the schools may not be able to solve the bullying problem if it's something that's coming from outside of school. So I think as a world, on a global front, we definitely need to first and foremost understand what exactly bullying is. Let's all be on the same page and work together. It's the only way we're going to be able to combat bullying. I don't think, we'll ever be able to stop bullying 100%, as much as we'll try, and that's my life purpose, because the suicide rates due to bullying are increasing through the roof, especially with cyberbullying, and being on the receiving end of that is horrendous, So I think there needs to be much more clearer education around bullying, age appropriate. It needs to be in every grade from preschool, teaching kids to be kind. Like the opposite of bullying is to be kind. So I think we're not really being taught that. Whereas if you look at our Indigenous cultures, empathy and respect are core values of a lot of Indigenous cultures around the world. And unfortunately, I think that's being lost a lot in the Western mentality of divide and conquer that we may unconsciously be following. So I think it's really difficult, but bullying is something really close to my heart. And I think if we can all stand up and make sure that, we know that our children aren't bullying, or if they are being bullied, how do we deal with that? So it's going to be something that is going to be, you know, ongoing. It's been going on for generations and generations. I remember when I was a child, you know, seeing kids that were different, or they're obviously an easy target, and that's why they'll be bullied, whether they're bigger than everyone else, or they have a disability, or wear glasses, or have freckles, or anything that's different is usually an easy target for children that have not grown up in a very loving situation, because no one that grows up, you know, in a loving home goes about trying to hurt anyone else. So I think the question needs to come back to parents. We have an obligation to ensure that our children and future generations are, you know, able to live in a much more loving, compassionate and inclusive world.
Now, it's Jacob, a great question that you kickstarted us off with to explore the idea of bullying. And one of the, as Yarraka was saying, there's all of these steps along the way as we think about the intensity of bullying, and then there's a whole other world, which is, they all sort of interconnect. And there's the other world is about whether we hurt people sometimes that we love and we care about, and sometimes we do. You know, my almost 2-year-old daughter will just consistently just say no to me for everything that I offer her, and I feel like I'm just filling her with love. And sometimes to our parents, we push back on our parents because we're trying to understand what's right and what's wrong. So I think part of it, Jacob, is we're all testing the rules when we're going through school, and for most of life we start to try and, what's right, what's wrong, you know, what can I do? Oh, that hurt someone, maybe I won't do that again, or maybe I will do that again, and why are you doing that again if you do it again? So as we explore pain, we're also exploring pleasure, and we're never going to have a world without both of them. I think trying to build our own independent resilience and how we can understand it, have empathy and care and forgiveness for people, and try not to be frozen by those actions when people hurt us, but try and practice understanding so we can hopefully sidestep it like a person playing football or in a video game. You kind of step away from it and let it move past you. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Is there anything that anyone on the panel wants to know from each other? Chris, Yarraka, Gideon, Daisy, have you got any questions for each other quickly before we wrap up?
I just wanted to say thank you to Chris. The comment that you made, question everything, that's something that I've been raised with, because trust is huge. And I think we need to start questioning everything and finding information out for ourselves. If you want to Google an answer, try Googling the opposite so you can get a balanced equation. But I think in Indigenous culture, there's no language words for why. So I think it's really interesting on a First Nations lens to think that we didn't encourage our children to ask why questions. So, you know, I thought it was really important what Chris said, and I encourage people to question everything and make sure you're getting or making an informed decision before passing judgment. But yeah, thanks, Chris. Question everything. That's one of my mottos.
My pleasure. I think it's particularly important in the world today where there's so much fake news and disinformation. It's even more critical now than ever before.
Definitely.
That wraps us up, gang. Yindi, how did we go? Did you have a good time? Yindi, what did you think about co-hosting? Did you go okay with it today? Is your mute button going to come off? Might have it. While we're swinging back to grab Yindi, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us. Jade, thank you for joining us. Sam, Crystal, Jacob, you were fantastic in the audience. To Kernai College for kickstarting this partnership, and we'll have more school partners coming in daily as we move through the show every single day. To Principal Rodalgan, who came on and was fantastic today as a 60-second challenge, and for everybody who's been a part of the show, Jack Fuller, Gideon Mzembe, Chris Neal, Yarraka Bayles, Daisy Turnball-Brown, you've all been fantastic. Thanks for joining us on IMAGI-NATION TV. Good on you all.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, gang. Yindi, have I got you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
How did you go co-hosting today? What was the experience like?
It was a great experience. I think it was really funny getting to hear everyone's stories and what they think about different things. So thanks for having me.
Oh, it was a pleasure, and thanks for the way you you thought about your answers and just took time. And I loved in the middle of it when you said, I actually don't have a question yet, Jack. I thought that was awesome. So thanks for taking the time to be a part of this. We're doing Imagination TV so we can get a mentor into every kid's home every single day. We want to be there for kids who are struggling and also kids that are trying to make sense of the world today and understand it tomorrow. So we'll be there for the kids who are also going through the roof and want to take on the world and invent the futures of tomorrow and are looking for extra inspiration as well. So Imagination TV is coming to you every single day at 12 noon Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And then we're also replaying it in South Africa, Uganda, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria, the countries we're working in, and the continent of Africa, and also in the United States as well. So thanks to our guests for being a part of the show. And we're now going to finish the show today with a question which I have in my head, which is where do dreams come from? So we traveled around the world and asked some kids where dreams came from, and that's going to wrap up our show today. If you want to support Imagination TV, head to aimmentoring.com, grab a This Hoodie Pays Rent hoodie or an Imagination hoodie, or kick in a donation, and let's keep working together to ask complex questions and come together to build an education platform for our kids for tomorrow and well into the future. Thanks to our students, thanks to Kernigh College, and let's go check out some kids talking about dreams around the world.
We want to try and work out where do dreams come from. So what do you think? Where do dreams come from?
From the dream time.
What are dreams?
Comes from your imagination.
What is that?
It's like a world of things that you think of.
What do you guys dream about?
Riding a unicorn and a turtle on its back.
A turtle on the back of the unicorn, or the turtle and the unicorn next to each other with you sort of one leg on each?
Next to each other, I'd say.
Next to each other.
Who's powering the movement?
A cheetah.
What do you dream about?
Being rich.
Echiloto chichi.
I want to know, what's a dream?
A train is something that runs on the rails, and it takes people from Brooklyn to the Bronx, or from Queens to Brooklyn.
Who makes dreams?
Us. Your brain? I reckon dreams are clouds what like are in your head, and like they picture all the stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do actually.
I think I go to sleep and my bed takes me to this stuff.
Your bed takes you?
Yeah, it kind of flies and takes me to these places when I sometimes have dreams.
What is your dream? Do you have a dream?
I dreamed about dinosaurs.
You can dream about like you're in a forest or a jungle. I have dreams when I'm a green guy who can turn into animals.
Who invented dreams?
Martin Luther King.
When do you reckon the first ever dream was ever had?
1981.
So since 1981, when the first dream was had, have all people since that moment been able to dream?
No.
Why do you think no?
Sometimes people need to see stuff and hear stuff to dream. Or some people don't because they can just stay up and don't go to sleep. Yeah, I reckon every kid has a dream. But sometimes you have a scary dream, like on Halloween you might have a scary dream. And those bad dreams are so, like scary. Sometimes you dream about when you are in a scary hotel where there's vampires and zombies and skeletons that are still alive.
How much do you think dreams cost to make?
$10.
$10?
That's a well-priced dream.
What do you think, Bob?
The amount that you have to pay the hospital to get yourself out of your mum's belly.
What is psychology?
Psychology. We don't know the word that we call psychology. And that word is confusing us. We don't know. Psychology. Psychology.
Why do you think we use imaginations? Why as human beings, why do we have an imagination?
You can go off into far places. I don't know. It's hard. Really hard.
Why is it hard?
It's just hard.
Well, that might be our time.